I found it! The cat's meowing on the other side.
If you crouch down, you should be able to fit.
Here goes nothing. So comfy.
It's the same cat from before.
There he is!
How did he get here in the first place? Wait!
I see.
Though you're still so small, you'll soon be born. So this message is for you. There may come a day when you'll curse being born into this world. You'll wonder what you did to deserve this. And you'll probably have plenty of bitter words to tell me. But I don't think I'll be around by then to listen to your complaints. I want you to know how truly sorry I am. I just want you to believe this. No matter what happens, all we wanted was for you to be happy.
To-do list. 1. Eat a whole cake by myself. 2. Share a meal with my family. 3. Visit all the friends I can. 4. Read all the books I've wanted to. 5. Buy the clothes I always dreamed of. 6. Make up with that certain somebody.
The silver bell wasn't a particularly outstanding decoration, but it did ring the most beautifully. I'd always wondered what kind of home such a lovely bell had come from. It belonged to an old woman who lived alone without relatives, in a large mansion I'd never seen before.
Madam, it's time for supper.
Thank you, dear.
Madam, the lilies in the garden have bloomed. I've put them in this vase.
What a lovely scent.
Madam, it started raining. Allow me to close the windows.
Yes, and draw the curtains, too.
The old woman was waited on hand and foot by her servants. She'd rely on their help as she sat idly in her chair, listening to her favorite music. She'd even ask them to change out the records. But most of the servants seemed to genuinely adore their employer. But there was one thing the old woman would ask several times a day.
Excuse me, but could you call Chris here for me?
Later that same day,
Oh, where is Chris?
and again even later,
Please find Chris for me.
though normally obedient, this one request was always met with hesitation.
Madam, Chris is all ready.
The maids would start cautiously. "Oh yes, you're quite right," the old woman would say, cutting them off.
She's not with us anymore, is she? I'd nearly forgotten.
She'd murmur with a nod, but not a few hours later, she'd ask the same questions again. She had them stop her favorite record.
Oh, wherever could my darling Chris be?
One rainy night, the mansion was in an uproar.
Madam? Madam!
The servants dashed through the halls in a frenzy. Finally, one of the maids shouted in despair.
Why can't I find her cane?
Though it wasn't too cold outside, the sheets of rain continued to pour relentlessly.
She couldn't have gone outside. Could she?
A chill passed over the gathered servants before they set out. They put on their coats and called for help outside. I tore my eyes from them and made for the rain-drenched town. Amidst the downpour, I smelled the sweet fragrance of lily. In the back lane of a park, far from the mansion. I made out the figure of the old woman. She was surrounded by a crowd who moved and gabbed around her.
Come on, lady, you'll catch your death out here. Maybe you should see the police.
The old woman's shoes and designer clothes were soaked through. A man tried taking her by the hand, but the old woman refused to budge, her face adamant. Fed up with her antics, the men finally left, leaving her behind. I cautiously stepped just into her field of vision, and without saying a word, rang my silver bell. It rang clear through the rain. The old woman raised her head sharply in surprise, her blurry eyes looking at me.
Chris?
The old lady rasped. I rang the bell again in a nod, and then turned around.
Chris, wait! Wait for me!
Her cane clicked as she followed me. I may not be able to carry her all the way to the mansion, but it'd be enough to bring her to her servants. I stopped often to look over my shoulder, to make sure I didn't lose her. The sound of that beautiful bell was a beacon. At last, one of the servants noticed the old woman and shouted, "Madam!" As she ran towards her, the old woman bent down to scoop me up and held me, trembling. The servants weren't able to hide their surprise, seeing how much the late Chris had changed upon her return. Not one of them said that I wasn't Chris, because the old woman called me so. The maids nodded in obedience, just glad that their beloved employer had returned home safe. I am Chris. Chris with her silver bell. I'm the tiny, adorable Chris, loved by her grandmother in this grand mansion. I've gained so much. Gentle hands and many, many new names. Mondays, Henri. Tuesdays, Fleur. Wednesdays, Sylvia. Thursdays, Lot. Fridays, Bisque. Saturdays, Chris. And for just one day, I'm no one else but myself. It was supposed to be revenge. Revenge for the deceased girls who'd led a better life than I. With vengeance and blasphemy laid to rest, all that's left is me, a lie. Before I knew, I began wondering about the future. When? Tell me, when? When will I fall in love? Once I find someone who loves me, I'll finally be given a name. Not just someone else's substitute, but a name all my own. That's what I decided. So then why? Why did I have to meet him? He lived on a cliff face that looked down on the town. His features were considered striking, his posture regal. But those weren't the only things that made me stop in my tracks. I didn't really need a reason, because to him, it didn't matter what bell I put on. Nothing would change the fact that I was nothing. A bell with 2 stripes of light pink lay at his feet. It didn't belong to him. The bell, like his love, was waste on the street. His features knew despair. You could see the hollowness of death in his eyes. no matter how much I stared or spoke. He never once looked back at me. I gingerly pick up the rosy pink bell. Its soft sound should be enough to reach his ears, stir his heart, and open his eyes. Then, in a husky voice, he will speak in a tone drowning with emotion. He will call out the name of his past love.
Maria?
And I'll choke up with emotion and smile as I say, "That's right. I'm your Maria." And then there won't be any real me left in this world.
Please, tell me your real name.
I giggle softly and answer again, "I'm Maria." His brow will surely furrow as he snuggles close.
That's not your name. It can't be.
But that's the name of your beloved, right? I loved you. But the one that you loved was never me at all. You loved the real owner of this pink bell. Imagine it. A rival whom even death couldn't kill. The one woman he really loved. I hated her, cursed her, and stole her name and identity. And I do it no matter how miserable it makes me.
Oh, Maria. If we'd never met, then I'm sure I'd have rotted away right on the spot.
Those are the only words that can bring me salvation now. As long as you're happy, then I'll never need a silly name. A storm was brewing. The high winds that had been beating on the windows since morning gathered dark clouds and pelted the forest trees. I leapt from the safety of the old woman's blanket, raced through the town, and headed for the mountain cottage. My old hideout. I'd take a bell and think about the past each time I came here. I go by many names now. So whose ghost remains in this dreary mountain hut? A brilliant flash of light, coupled with thunder, filled the sky. Every hair on my body stood on end. There was a tearing sound of wood splitting. Chills ran down my spine. I quickened my pace without thinking. A tremor crept down my back. The scene that greeted me as I reached that hut was indescribable. A massive cloud of smoke clogged my nose and burned my skin. The mountain was on fire, and the gusty winds helped spread the flames quickly. In my panic, I dove into the hut. The heat was as hot as stoked coals, but through the burning and stench, I knew I had to salvage my bells. They'd been proof that the girls had lived, and now they were the one place I felt at home. I gathered the 7 bells and made for my escape, but the hut entrance was already engulfed in flames. I leapt through a broken window, feeling as though I was being burned alive. I could hear the destruction all about me. Just outside the window was the cliff face. I jumped down from my perch, prepared to take the dive. Through it all, I kept the 7 bells tightly held in my mouth.
I expected a weakling like you to make it this far.
What are you?
Hey, it's no use! Look out!
I do not have to answer to you. Any threat to the project must be eliminated. Fool. Your existence amounts to nothing more than a goldfish swimming upriver. When we were conceived, the age of man ended.
What? What are you talking about?
Our plan is on schedule. Make the most of the little time you have left.
We have to act fast!
Right. Man, I'm getting sleepy. Hey, is this?
After falling unconscious, I awoke to the pattering of raindrops. I could still smell the mountainside burning, but the rain was now falling harder than before. I knew I was far from safe. Nestled close against the ground, I'd already lost the sensation in both my arms and legs. I asked the heavens if this was my punishment. Was this what I deserved for having taken the dead girl's happiness as my own in a twisted and shameless act? Through the ash-ridden world, a voice was calling me. No, that's not my name. And yet...
Maria! Maria!
Yes. The one calling me was none other than my beloved.
Maria, hang in there! Don't die on me!
Oh, yes. My love. My one true love. Don't give up. I whispered desperately. Don't give in to the despair. Please. Live. I thought that if he lost me, he'd never see his precious Maria again. And it wasn't just him. Henri, Fleur, Sylvia, Lot, Bisque, Chris. They'd all been beautiful. Don't kill me, I shouted. Please don't kill the ones you love. Trembling, I handed the 7 bells over to him. If you can, take these in my place. Just don't let their loving families lose all hope. He looked at me as if wanting to speak. Then, taking the bells with him. He turned and ran. As his figure became smaller and smaller, it was eventually washed away by the rain. I tried calling his name, but couldn't form the words. If I managed to speak, I might make the mistake of telling him something I could never say. As I thought about how the cold rain would sweep away the fire, along with my soul, I thought of the last person who'd considered me family. I may not have been the one they loved, but I certainly loved the warm and gentle hands that touched me. I lied and desecrated the dead, all for my revenge. And yet here I was, crying, here on the brink of death. I'd come closest to those girls and could finally, truly cry for them. After all, you know how it is. You must know, right? All you wanted was to live. The rain washed the mountainside gray, draining the light from everything. I was cloaked in darkness and rain. Then I heard the faint sound of a bell ringing. At least I could tell that my ears were still working. I focused my senses on the source. Then, just behind the sound, I heard footsteps and voices approaching.
Come on, Henri!
I thought I was hearing things. It had to just be a memory enclosed inside that bell. After all, no one would call for me.
Fleur! Sylvia!
It can't be. My eyelids fluttered. Why? From beyond the falling ash, I could make out figures. They circled around me. The boy, the boss, Mama.
What? Basque!
Chris!
No, the children and the teacher, the master writer and grandmother. No. I tried to scream, but failed. No, don't look at me. You'll see through my lies. Don't hate me. I was never the girls that all of you loved.
We already knew that.
Was the reply from the one who used the 7 bells to gather everyone here. You snuggled close to me as I was wrapped in a warm towel. As you kept me warm, you dropped the 7 bells.
We already knew that, all along.
He sounded on the verge of tears as he kissed my cheek.
Don't you see? The ones we loved weren't the ghosts from the past.
His words forgave me.
We all know you made up those lies to try and help us. No one else but you could have made us feel so good. Could bring us so much joy. It was all thanks to you and your 7 bells.
I closed my eyes, the tears still streaming. I thought my life was just one lie after another. But no longer. I finally understood it now. My name will be the Seven-Colored Bell. A name given to me by my loving family and friends. I am Belle, carrying my 7 colors. I was the most loved in town. I am Belle, and I was the luckiest cat in the world for having 7 names.